Well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us for season 2 of the HOG-POD as we launch here on the YouTube channel with episode 1. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and a safe New Year. And with any luck, most of you are still looking forward to a couple more days off work. For this opening episode of 2023, Gerard and I will be looking back at probably one of the biggest global events to have happened in 2022 and the hugely important contributions in time, energy and funds made by both HOG, Harley Owners Group, and its chapter members, as well as Harley owners and riders from right across the UK and Ireland. The invasion of Ukraine began on the 24th of February 2022, and for months it consumed the news being beamed across our TVs. It occupied the front pages of all of our newspapers, and of course you couldn't so much as switch the radio on without hearing all about the tragedy that was happening over in Ukraine. For many of us, the distressing images and the plight of the Ukrainian nation gripped at our stomachs, prompting a nationwide effort to provide support and help to those who were affected by this horrible war.
Businesses, community groups, churches, families, and individuals pulled together, collecting donations, monies, and even opening their homes to support the millions of displaced Ukrainian families. The same was true of many HOG chapter members from up and down the country, leading to several humanitarian aid convoys leaving the UK to complete a near 3,000-mile round trip to the refugee camp in Poland, taking aid directly to where it was needed the most. Over 60 tons of much-needed clothing, food, water, medical supplies and children's toys were driven by HOG chapter members to a distribution centre on the edge of the Polish-Ukrainian border. As we approach nearly 1 year on since the start of the war, we wanted to look back at the impact of the humanitarian aid runs by HOG members, how they got involved, how they found the experience, and what it meant to them to be part of it all on a personal level. Please welcome to the show Ken Britton and Mike Morris. Hello, Ken. Hello, Mike.
Hi there, guys.
Hi, guys. Nice to speak to you.
Good to see your faces again.
Yeah.
I know, Ken, we briefly bumped into each other in Birmingham at the Hot Rock. Mike, obviously we missed you, and Gerard wasn't there as well. But it's nice to say nearly a year on from the start of the war, or probably, 6 or 7 months from our journey together anyway, all get back here together. So thanks very much for joining us. Gerard and I were honoured to represent the Belfast Chapter and join the humanitarian run that arrived in the refugee camp on Saturday, the 21st of May, 2022. We were joined by chapter members from Wolfruna, Invicta and Black Mountains Chapter. And I'm pleased to say that Mike and Ken are from the Black Mountains Chapter. So starting with you, Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your chapter and your role within it?
Okay, well, my name's Ken Britton. I joined the Black Mountains Chapter in around early 2014. I bought my first Harley in 2007. Was on the road captain's course then in 2015, and I became chapter director in 2019. I was a late sort of person to get a motorbike license. So 2007, I've been riding, and I bought an Harley straight away.
Oh, you went straight on to Harley, did you?
Yeah, we went straight to Harley, yeah. Because I'll tell you why. A friend of mine rang me up early 2007, said, "Boy, we're going on Route 66 in September." I said, "When? I haven't got a license." He said, "Yeah, you'll get one. We go in." And I had one in May. So he rang me in January, booked the trip, and then I had my license in May, and we went on Route 66 in September. That's exactly how my life works.
So you literally got your license, bought a Harley Davidson, and the first big trip you did was Route 66?
In September. I had my license in May and bought my first Harley, I think was in June. And then we were going on Route 66 in September.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What about you, Mike? How did you get involved with it? with the chapter?
Well, it all started really, guys, I've been riding motorbikes since I was about 12, 13 years of age. So I've been riding motorbikes, and in my late 20s, I finally sort of got out to the motorbikes, getting married, obviously having a family. And it wasn't until later on then, when I was about 50, I got back into my motorbikes again. And I didn't buy my first Harley until around about 2018. And that's when I first joined Black Mountains Chapter. And I was with the chapter for about 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And then finally, then I became a webmaster for them and a few other things. And eventually ended up as the secretary for Black Mountains. So I've been doing that for near on a year now. So that's gone really, really quick, guys. Yeah.
Now, going back to the run that we did this year, the aid run we did this year to Ukraine. Mike, I'll come to you on this one. How did you hear about it? How did you get involved with it?
Well, obviously there was a lot of media hype as well on the TV, etc., and what have you. And then it was just happened that one night that we had our annual sort of monthly meeting, Black Mountains Chapter meeting, and it was brought to our attention by Ken himself that obviously there was a few issues going on, and one of the guys within our chapter, Ian Jones at the time, he brought that up as well at the same time. So we just started talking about it, and we heard then that there was a few other chapters that were getting involved in taking aid out to Poland, and we just decided there and then, look, we need to do something, and we'll just put our heads together, see what we could come up with, and hence we ended up with 3 van loads and 6 drivers. But I will say a big part of that organisation, and I have to give credit where it is due, was Ian Jones. I will say that. And he's no longer with the chapter now, unfortunately. But no, we felt that it was an absolute must, and I think it really touched everyone within the chapter. And we felt that we needed to do something to support the Ukraine people, because they were being penalised for no fault of their own, you know. And it was very, very touching, very, very. It did really, really touch my emotions, and I think it touched a lot of people's emotions as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as a dad and a husband, when I started to watch the TV, quite surprisingly to myself, to be honest with you, it started to have quite an impact on me. Ordinarily, I would have watched stuff like that from, hellholes all around the world, thinking, it's unfortunate, and, you'd sort of you would do a donation as in a physical donation. But for the first time, and, I'm in 44, so still obviously hopefully halfway to go, but for the first time in my life, from a humanitarian point of view, I felt that pull and that drag to go and physically do something. And it became really apparent to me very quickly that I needed to do something. I then heard about these runs to Ukraine, via H.O.G, or certainly being done by members of H.O.G. And for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. And the reason that I wanted to do it was to be able to, I suppose, personally feel that, no, I did do something. I didn't stand on the sidelines. I didn't just say that's a real shame, but actually went and did something. For yourself, Ken, what made you want to get involved with the endeavour? What pulled you towards doing something?
Right, what happened was, a friend of ours had gone out from Port Talbot to Poland, come back, we was having a chat, me, myself, Martin Davis, who was on the run with us, our treasurer, and we were speaking to this guy, and we decided then that we're going to do it anyway, right? We had decided that we were going to do it, right? I.e. Martin and myself, right? Then what happened then was, Ian Jones, as you know, guys, he was on the run as well. We were talking to him about it, and then he got Mark Cutler come into the conversation, right? To which then, obviously, being directors, we have a different, on our Facebook sites, we have a director's page, right? So obviously then Ian, I got hold of Mark. We had a conversation. I rang Mark. And then that's what kicked it all off. I took it into the chapter meeting. And our members were sort of, okay, we'll have a look into that. And, the rest is really history. But that's what kicked it off. And I think, as you guys know, right, Mark Cutler is a strong personality, right? I mean, and when you spoke to that guy, he was totally and utterly committed. And he drawed me into that, to be honest with you. A low mind, I was going anyway.
Yeah.
I was going. It was irrelevant. If anybody else weren't going, I was still going.
Yeah.
Well, I actually, in Ukraine, at the refugee center, the main aid center in Przemysl in Poland, I had a great conversation with Mark, and regardless of anything, he was very, very passionate about what he was doing. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt of that, and it wasn't his first run, and it was actually through a post that Mark had put up that I had initially heard about this, and back in 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer. And for many years, when you hear those words, you have cancer, it completely changes your outlook on life. And for a long time, you're trying to get your head around that, but your outlook on life changes. And I really wanted to make a difference in whatever way that it possibly could. When I saw that initial post from Mark Cutler, I went, okay, now there's an idea. And then literally we were having a conversation. We were actually having, I think Kenny, it was an officers meeting we were having. And I think you threw it out, there's an idea coming about here about doing these chapter runs to the Ukraine, and I just went, well, I'm on for that. And literally about 4 days later, Kenny rang me up and he said to me, listen, we were talking on the chapter meeting the other night and I had said something. He says, I just wanted to know. He says, there's something I want to ask you. And I said, yeah. And he went, but I haven't asked you yet. And he went, I don't care what it is, I'm going anyway.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And he says, but it's to Ukraine. And I said, well, when do we go? Right? And literally within 20 days, myself and Kenny managed to pull together a van, insurance, Stena Line. I mean, and Stena Line donated all of the ferries. The Paul Doherty from the West Belfast Food Bank had donated a van load of stuff and medical stuff from there and clothes and everything. And there were so many places. Kenny, you have a list of them all. The Southwest Belfast Food Bank donated another load of food. And if I hadn't have been, to be honest with you, for Bridge Commercials on the A1, who donated a brand spanking new van, none of it would have happened. But within 20 days, we were meeting you guys on the ferry and on our way to Ukraine. It was just an all-round amazing effort, and definitely something that was well worth doing and taking part in. And if I wanted to make a change, I feel after coming back from that trip that I made a change.
I mean, as Gerard said there, we put it together in about, we were quite late to the party. We again had a conversation with Mark Cutler, and I certainly can say, from my point of view, I was in Ukraine because of Mark Cutler. For yourselves, in relation to securing the vans and the donations, etc., how did you find that process? Now, obviously, at the time, it was a real hot topic. So, did you get a good response in relation to funding and donations, etc.?
Myself personally, right? I had a lot of donations. Like my parents give us over £700-800. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm in business myself, and a lot of people in the trade. I had donations off them. We got a pub that we do our meetings in, the Collier's Arms, in Pontryfan. They were out of this world, and one of the girls there, a girl called Donna Wallow, absolutely brilliant. She done so much, making cakes, cleaning cars, right? It was amazing. We were pretty good, Michael, when donations wise. We were all right. I got to say it. We were great, Yeah. I mean, even one of the girls in our chapter give us a big donation, a very big donation, which paid a lot of the system, to get us out there. Yeah. And remember, guys, we took 3 vans out.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah, I mean the Black Mount in your chapter, Ken, incredible. We had a very, very short time frame, and we were able to get 1 van there, but it was a sterling effort from you guys. Absolutely. I mean, all of you, Martin, Hughes, Graham, yourself, Mike, Ian, when to be honest with you, when me and Gerard, whenever we got onto the boat, we thought we were going to meet a number of different chapters. We weren't fully aware of all of the logistics. I know some of the English chapters were over a bit earlier, etc. But it was the only people that we met on the boat, and there was a good crowd here, and all from your chapter. It was brilliant. Obviously, the biggest challenge for us was getting a van. Gerard, he could sell snow to an Eskimo, so he managed to get that sorted out for us. What did you do about your vans?
Right. Okay. Ian Jones did it. Right. And I'm yet again, Ian, exactly like Gerard, right? Talk a glass side to sleep, right? Which, to be honest with you, right, in the end, once you start talking to him, you'll give him anything just to get rid of him, is the truth. Yeah. And that's what it was. And I got to say something, Ian was a massive part of that trip. Yeah. He sorted the vans out. He got in touch with Dr. What do you call it? Organic.
Dr. Organic.
Right? He done loads of stuff for them. British tissues. Yeah. Right? Exactly like Gerard. All right? And, you need people like him around you. Very good. And that's exactly what happened. Most of that he did. Yeah. Myself, Michael, and the other guys really were getting stuff brought in.
Family members
and stuff like that, which we filled, to be honest with you, a van and 3/4. Yeah. So off people's generosity, i.e. clothing and stuff like that,
Amazing, yeah.
But the other stuff was down to Ian.
I was just going to say now, but also I think nearly everyone rallied round family members or club members to fill the vans up and what have you. And the truth is, we had to finish and stop people in the end because we could have filled another 3 vans over, but we just didn't have the time to arrange any more vans, drivers, and
ferries, hotels.
Ferries, absolutely, guys. So it was a very humbling experience from how generous family members and friends and chapter members could be. It is really unbelievable when you ask them to come together, they do come together for us.
Because the way that me and Gerard approached it was, we were like, listen, we are going to go to Ukraine. There's no point us trying to ask for new donations, because we were very aware that there were lots of donations already waiting and just simply couldn't get a lift to Ukraine. So we kind of mopped up in there, and it was... we found filling the van to be actually surprisingly incredibly easily. I mean, over in West Belfast, from Gerard's part of the world, the most generous bunch of people you'll ever meet. It was just incredible. The 2 food banks who they didn't even want to be included. 2 food banks they didn't even want to be included in any of the promotions, did they, Gerard?
No, absolutely. Actually, one of them donated these shirts that we're wearing as well. A guy called Paul Doherty from the Food Stock, I think it is the call the place that he's. It's in Anderstown in Belfast, but and after we filled, I mean, literally, Paul donated medical supplies and food and clothes, and I think there was one particular bag, Kenny, sticks to my mind. It was there was a woman that came in and had knitted a full bag of baby's clothes and donated them. But after filling the van with that, I mean, the guy just came in and he said, listen, the next time that you're doing another run, he said, we have a warehouse over in the docks. He says, just pull the van in, fill it up.
I know that someone mentioned it very briefly there, but I think from all the chapter views, and in fact, I think just generally in relation to the Ukrainian effort, certainly up until the point where they eventually had to pull the plug. Stena Line ferries have, they as a company, not only did they help HOG and us, they provided so much free travel, so much very, very reduced travel as the overall effort towards helping Ukraine. And of all of the companies that were doing their bit for Ukraine, for me, Stena Line is the one that sticks out. I mean, the effort they did was momentous.
Absolutely, my friend. And one of the things we found that once we mentioned to some of the crew on board those the Stena Line, some of them were Ukrainian themselves. And the first thing they said, well, have you got cabins? We said, no, we're staying up for the night. And they said, don't do that. There's a few cabins. Yeah. And they donated cabins for us to get our heads down. Absolutely amazing.
It was sterling effort by Stena Lines. Sterling effort.
Can I just go over something quickly? Gerard and Kenny, what you said earlier on when you introduced how you felt about the things. And I have to say, and I think I speak for Ken and a lot of the people in the chapter, we all feel exactly the same. I think you summed it up really perfectly. And when we got there, it was, I found it upsetting, guys. I still do.
Yeah.
Guys, I like to. You guys didn't see this, right? But down in Neath here, right? There's a little charity cafe there, right?
Yeah.
And there's a few old ladies there. They got a knitting club there, right? And when I was emptying one of the vans, right, we were taking the stuff off, and I picked this box up.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Remember it?
Yeah.
And it had a little note in it, right?
Yes.
And it went something like, there was about 3 or 4, but it went something like, I send you this, right? I haven't got a lot myself, right? But I send you this because I think you need it more, right? And there was like toiletries in there and stuff like this, right? And it broke my heart, right? When I seen that, right? You guys wouldn't have seen it, right?
No.
The guys that was with us, because obviously, as you know, it's going to, when we talk about a little bit further, you guys had to rush off after we emptied your van,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
And there's a reason for that, right? So there was a few of these letters in there, and honest to God, guys, it was so humbling to see them and upsetting as well. Like, when you see people really that didn't have a great deal of money, right? But they could knit, they could, give stuff away, and that's what they did. They made blankets, they made all sorts. It was so, and I will find that, Ken. I'll have a look for it, and I will send it to you.
I stood in front of a congregation in a church. I don't know what the right word is because I'm not a religious guy, but the guy that wears the collar. Gerard, help me out here. Church of Ireland.
Oh, the Reverend.
Reverend, yeah, the Reverend, that's the one. So I stood in front of a congregation for a church, and the way I pitched it was, I was basically asking for help. I said, my name's Kenny. I'm in a motorcycle group. I'm in a riding club, and as me and a friend of mine are looking to join other members of my same sort of group to go to Ukraine and deliver donations. And I'm here to ask you for help today because we all throw money in a tin and we all, will give some clothes that don't fit us anymore. And I'm asking for something slightly different. I'm asking for the same things, but instead of you dropping it into a box in a supermarket or at the back of the church and then never wondering what's ever happened to that and if it ever made its destination, I'm here to say, if you can bring that in, I said, we will take it for you. Not only will we take it for you, we will drive it all the way to Ukraine and we will give it to the people that, that it's meant for. And over and above that, if I'm asked, where's this from? Or, what's this? I want to be able to say, this has come from a group of people in a town in Northern Ireland who don't know you. You don't know them. You're never going to meet them. But they gave this to me and trusted it to me and Gerard, and obviously you guys as well, to deliver it and get it to where it's meant to be. And what we found was, Gerard spoke there about the dolls that were cut, but they had loads of knitted clothes for kiddies, and whoever it is that donated it had dressed kiddies' dollies, and the clothes were to come off for the children, and the dollies were to be played for the children, and we were able to get that to women and children who really needed it. And when we were asked, that's great, we'll say, listen, a guy called Paul in West Belfast gave that to us from a lady who had knitted it for you, and here it is. And I went into toy shops, for example, and asked for, donations of toys, and exactly the same thing. I'm going to take this to the camp, and it's going to be 1,500 miles away, but I will deliver it for you. And that's obviously speaking to you guys at the time and hearing you say it now. This is what I think was so special about this trip for me, was it was far more than bunging 20 quid into a tin.
Yeah. And one person that hasn't been mentioned here, and this guy did so much. A guy called Paul Lustig from We Move Bikes. That guy donated a 40-foot container, and a guy drove that 40-foot container 3,000 miles, right, to make sure that aid got there. Was the company WMP, We Move Bikes? Isn't that what it was?
Yeah, that's it.
We Move Bikes.
We went.
Yeah.
I went up actually to load it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I went up myself, Ian and Paul Dillon. Yeah. Went up to load it. Right, with a good gang coming down from Wolfruna, with Mark. I met Mark. It was the first time I literally met Mark himself, and a few guys in, Paul and David from
Invicta Chapter.
Invicta Chapter.
Yeah.
We met them.
Yeah, they're nice guys.
Yeah. And we've been friends for life ever since.
Absolutely.
And that's what HOG does.
Yeah, so on that, so obviously we're all members of HOG, and there was members from various different chapters within HOG that took part in this, not necessarily driving out to Ukraine, but as you've just said there, Ken, you helped deal with the donations from Diva. So Diva were able to make that personal contribution, and you delivered it on their behalf. And as you say, HOG kind of gives us that platform, doesn't it? As far as HOG's actual involvement, HOG as in the entity, how did you find their involvement?
Well, the thing is, right, regarding our trip over there, the HOG organised one was the month before, right? Ourselves as a chapter, we couldn't do it, right? I felt that we couldn't do it. And maybe, and to be honest with you guys, I took that decision, right? The chapter didn't make that decision. I made that decision, right or wrong for the chapter, right? And I'll put my hand up for it, right? I made that decision that the Black Mountains chapter was not going on the organised HOG run down there. Reason being, I felt that we did not have enough time to do it.
Correct.
That's my opinion. Right or wrong, chapter, that was not a chapter decision, that was a Ken Britton decision, director of Black Mountains. And I chose that decision, right? And we didn't go.
Yeah. But once Ken realised, he spoke to all the guys and all the team and what have you. And one of the things that we all agreed on was that we were not ready for it at that time. And we just didn't want to go half-heartedly out there with, say, half a van or one van when we knew we could take 3 vans, right? So for postponing it for a few weeks till we could get ourselves ready and get everything in place, which I believe it's the important part is the 3 Ps, and you know about that. If it's piss poor planning, then things will go wrong. Absolutely. And that was one of the things that came up when we had our discussions. And it was the perfect decision from Ken's point of view and from the rest of us as well. And we haven't looked back since. We knew it was the right decision then once we were on our way. Everything was in place. Everything was very well planned. And credit where it's due. Again, I will say, Ian Jones had a big part in that. And as an end result, guys, we met up with you. And if we'd gone earlier, we wouldn't have met up with you too. And we just made some really, really, I'd like to consider you as really, really good
absolutely.
friends.
Absolutely. Just on that point, actually, personally, I found HOG's physical involvement in it very, very lacking. I think that HOG could have done an awful lot more. They could have got involved an awful lot more. But with that said, had it not have been for HOG and the chapters involved with HOG made it possible by virtue of the chapters for this to happen, for the chapters to come together and pull this off. And it was no mean feat, certainly from our end here. I mean, 3 weeks, 20 days, we had to do it, right? But had it not been for HOG, we wouldn't have met you guys from the Black Mountain chapter, or we wouldn't have met the guys from Mark Cutler, etc., from Wolfruna and the Invicta Chapter, which they call the guy from Invictus, is it Tom Barden? Colin Barden.
Colin, amazing man.
He was great. We met him out there.
He rode down there on a motorbike.
He rode all the way down there on a Harley.
All the way.
He was amazing, guys.
Absolute trooper. But I will say this now: it was a long journey down, right? And we had a bit further. We had a bit further to go.
You did,
to meet up with yourselves. I mean, we clocked it from the moment that we picked the van up from Bridge Commercials. I zeroed the clock on the van, and to the putting the handbrake on when we pulled back to deliver the van back. And I took a photograph of it and I showed it again. I couldn't believe it. It was 3,000 miles on the nose.
Oh, wow.
That's really well.
Right?
I was running far off.
Yeah, I was
3,000 miles on the nose. But it was a long, that's 1,500 miles each way, right?
Yeah. That's what it was, 3,000.
Come forward 3,000 miles.
How did you occupy yourselves on the way down and the way up?
Well, to be honest with you, regarding me, right? Martin, as you know, remember Martin. Martin didn't trust me driving the truck, so I was his sort of sat-nav. So I didn't do much driving, to be honest with you. I just kept him awake. And that's exactly what I did. And I started decorating the van. Yeah. I kept decorating. I keep an eye on him, and then if I notice him, and I shout at him. But I probably, out of all that trip, I probably drove about, 100 mile. And that was about as much as I drove. But he would not let me drive, so I don't know what it is, but he wouldn't let me do it. He loved driving, so I left him alone.
Well, for me, Hugh Hughes was my driving partner. We did share. And I think, really speaking, I may have driven, about 65% of it, and Hugh drove the rest. But obviously he wasn't too happy when we were coming into the towns and the cities and what have you. And that's when I was doing a lot of the driving in those towns and cities and that. But we had a good rapport together, me and you. We got a bit of a sort of a military background, shall I say, and what have you. And that, I mean, you spoke to Hugh, Gerard, and you clocked him straight away. And I'm serious. What you see is what you get. He's a genuinely lovely guy. He is, absolutely. And we just got chatting about how things were in the military for him and how he found it once he came out and he retired. He asked me sort of the things that I've done through my life and what have you, and that's how we occupied our time, really. Apart from that, I'm thinking about the next coffee stop, next toilet stop, and the next food stop, guys. Yeah.
Well, for myself and Kenny, I mean, first of all, I mean, the drive from Belfast and getting the ferries from Dublin to Holyhead, and then the drive from Holyhead to Harwich to catch the ferry. I mean, that was just panic, right? And then getting on the ferry at Harwich and meeting up with you guys, right? It was only at that point that we were able to go, Hugh, right? We're here, right?
Yeah.
The pressure's off here now, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't all. I mean, whereas the entire journey was a very, very emotional journey for me, and certainly, and I'm sure for every one of you, right? They did have their moments of humour, and I have to say that I spent quite a bit of the way on the way down reflecting on a seagull, right?
Yeah.
Because we had decided in Harwich in the Hook of Holland, when we came off the ferry in the Hook of Holland and we were waiting in the queue to get out of the docks, we had decided to do a bit of video footage for the trip down. You know, we're here, we've arrived in Holland, we're now on the trip through Europe to Poland, blah, 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 right? So we decided to video this. So I was videoing Kenny, and Kenny was in the driver's seat looking towards me and giving it his best sterling effort to explain where we were, etc., etc. And I noticed in the background there was a guy, an Oriental guy, and he was walking up and down and looking up at the skies. So while Kenny was doing his professional bit and videoing, this guy just stuck his head through the window and said, "A seagull just shit on my car."
I remember that. I remember that.
And I could just remember the expression on Kenny's face.
So funny. Yeah, I
You
remember
know,
that.
if there was ever a blooper, that was a blooper. And the guy, Kenny just had to keep. Kenny said that was no seagull. That was a dive bomber. So that was an RAF bomber that done that on your car. Right?
Genuinely, I have never seen so much shit come out of anything.
I
know.
They do make a mess, guys, don't they? Yeah.
But
And if I never have another currywurst, it will never be too soon.
See, guys, going back a little bit by now, right? I mean, you said something there, right, Gerard? Was it HOG that was the motivation of us going there, right? I'm going to say to you, no, right? Yeah. Was it Mark Cutler, right?
Yes.
Who used HOG as a tool, right? Because that's what he did, right?
Yeah.
He used HOG as a tool to get it further on, and that's what I believe happened.
Oh no,
right?
I'm 100% behind you on that. 100% behind you on that, Ken. No,
And Mark,
yeah.
Sorry, Gerard.
Just to clarify that point. No, as far as I'm concerned about HOG gave us not the platform as such, but the ability to do it by virtue of the chapters involved in HOG. But the initial idea and the planning, etc., of it and execution of it, 100% was down to Mark Cutler. All credit to Mark for that, 100%.
And And what HOG did, right, to be honest with you, and they do it,
Very little
right?
fun.
They have made, right, me, you, Gerard, myself, you, Gerard, and Kenny would may never have met.
Yeah.
That's
right?
correct.
We
Yes.
would may never have met.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I say it now with Paul and David from Evil Legion, right? And Steve up there, right? And Trev and them, right? I would never have met those guys. And now I can honestly say to you, as you two, right, you're probably going to be friends forever.
Yeah. We actually spoke about that on the boat,
We're
Ken.
going to be friends and brothers and sisters or whatever, and we'll be there forever.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what HOG does for you.
Correct. That's exactly. We spoke about that on the boat. You know, and it made me for the first time understand that when people were often talking to me about HOG being a brotherhood and being a brotherhood, it was only when I went on that trip that I fully understood what that brotherhood was about. Because had it not been for HOG, that brotherhood wouldn't have been there.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, we spoke about this in the first episode of this podcast, actually, to be or not to be a member of HOG. And probably the easiest way to sum it up is, you know, in my view anyway, I think HOG provides the opportunity, but it's for us as members to actually take that opportunity, if that makes sense, you know. You know, because I know, you know, you don't have to read too far into the various groups to do a Harley Davidson, and everyone loves to take a wee pot shot at HOG for this or for that. But I think the purpose on the role of HOG is to provide provide the opportunity, and exactly as you said, Ken and Mike, and obviously I'd say the same to Martin and Hugh and Graham. If it wasn't for HOG, we would never have crossed paths. I would never have been in the Ukraine. And yes, Matt Cutler was the driving force. And he was very cute the way he did it. It was very cute the way he did it. Yeah. And he quite rightly, HOG was a tool to get all of us together. Because if Matt Cutler had have rung Ken Britton and said, "Hi, my name's Mark, I'm a random stranger. Would you like to go to Ukraine?" You'd probably say, "Go away," you know. But instead, it was like, I'm a director for a HOG chapter.
That's how it goes.
I'm looking at doing this. What's your thoughts? And not only did he get you involved, but he got Mike and he got Martin and everybody else got brought in.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, what I do want to say, now you've brought it up, Gerard, is regarding HOG itself. Did I think that they did a lot? And I'm glad you brought it up, because I don't feel that they did a lot. And like you said, it was just a tool that we used. And I still believe that HOG could have done a lot more and contributed a lot more, right? But they didn't. But that's for another time, right? However, after our little trip, guys, to the Ukraine and to Poland and coming back, I obviously posted a few pictures and a few things on my own personal page. And my old dive master, who's an ex-Navy guy, who got his own business, teaching diving, etc., and what have you. And he happens to have relations in the Ukraine. And after seeing what we did, not just myself, because you guys were part of my sort of posts, shall I say, and it was a series of posts. He was so inspired by that, he couldn't thank us enough, right, for what we'd done. And that, in turn, inspired him to contact his friend up in Newcastle. And the both of them put 2 vans together. And they actually then, not only did they actually go to Poland, but he even sought out special disposition or dispensation from the mayor of the town where his relations live to cross the border and deliver those supplies to actual relations and people within that village. And those people there, they couldn't thank him enough. But he will still say to this day that it was our trip, guys, and my posting of that trip that inspired him and his mate to actually do that. And if we've done that just for one person, well then, fabulous. If there's more out there that we've inspired, then fab. I think we've done our job, guys.
That is a brilliant story. And do you know what, Mike? It isn't just one person, because in a similar vein, obviously, we were, myself and Gerard, as our chapter, were posting, and I had at least 2 people get in contact asking how we'd gone about it and what we did, etc. And I know that as a result of the post that me and Gerard were making, there was at least 2 separate journeys that had left Northern Ireland to go and do exactly the same thing. And, you know, I mean, it was, again, obviously we're here now in January 2023. It's off everybody's radar. It's kind of fallen off the agenda, but I suppose at the time we're talking what, 8 weeks into the war. It was such a massive deal, wasn't it? And everything was, all emotions were heightened, and you know, it kind of, like I said in the introduction, it consumed everything that we did. I appreciate we're a little bit of time on now, but casting your minds back, I'm going to ask you a question which I'm sure you will still remember, because I certainly haven't forgot it for me. So of all the things that I witnessed in Poland, and then personally for me actually in Ukraine, the one thing that stuck out on my mind was, do you remember the convoy as we arrived into the distribution center in Shimmershill? There were kiddies kicking footballs. There were families just sitting around. There was one guy that walked across in front of the van in his dressing gown from a tent to go and join a queue to try and get some football. All of it really, really difficult to see. Really, you know, really quite difficult to see. The one thing that stuck with me, and it still gets to me now if I think about it too much. As we drove in, there was a tarpaulin tent, and there was a piece of rope that was a washing line. There was 2 items of clothes that were hanging on that line, and it was a newborn pair of trousers and a newborn top. That will never leave me. And it wasn't gory. It wasn't sad. It's what it represented, I think, you know, a makeshift tent and newborn children's clothes hanging from a washing line. The 2 things just should never, ever be seen together. No. On the same topic, Ken, I'll start with you. Is there one thing from that trip that stuck with you that you'll never forget?
No, it is, and I'll tell you what it is. When we went, after we unloaded the vans, right, there was a lady there, and she took me around to have a look around there, right? And she took me into this room, and there was 500 or 600 make beds, and they were like next door to each other, and that's stuck in my mind right now, when it will not go out of my mind. Because I was looking at it and I was thinking to myself, there's people in there, they don't know the next guy, the next woman, the next, you know, and they lay in by the side of them. And because that's the way they were that close. And, you know, and then I carried on going around it. I don't know if you guys did it, but I started walking around it a bit more then. And, you know, then there was some good stuff there as well, you know, they could have their aide done and stuff like this, and, you know, but that thing with the beds I can't get rid of it. Can't get rid of it. It was like a massive hall just full of beds. Full of beds. And when I mean camping beds stacked by each other, like, you know, there must have been about 600 of them, guys. You know, at least. And that sticks to my head. That's the thing, and I can't get that out of my head.
It sticks with me today,
to be honest, because you've seen that.
I'll just support Ken on that, because I didn't actually walk around, and I didn't have to walk around, guys, because we got to where the lines of demarcation were, where we couldn't go past without somebody accompanying us. And I just looked in there, and I could see what was there, and that really did upset me. I turned around, Ken and Ian and those, they went around and had a look. And I just couldn't. I went back to the van. I found it, and I really had to gather myself together, because I was virtually in tears. That's the way it affected me.
It was upsetting.
And I don't feel embarrassed telling you guys about it, because that's the way I felt. all the way through from start to when we started doing the collection to even the time we came home. Still thinking about it today.
But you shouldn't be embarrassed to say that, Mike. Because from my point,
I know.
This needs to be heard. From my point, there's so much given out on the media, and I have heard so many things about how Vladimir Zelensky has X billion pounds and he could solve this in the morning, and Putin could do this, and blah, blah, blah. The bottom line on it is the one person that can't do anything about that is the person on the ground. And I don't think that was portrayed enough. And, we seen it firsthand. And what people are listening to from us is not media hype, and it's not there to sell newspapers, etc. It's what we actually seen and witnessed. And after we left the main distribution camp in Shimashel, and then drove the 15 kilometers then up to Medica, which was the main migration center. All of the countries had brought in their migration centers to help people basically move on from there to other camps throughout Europe and throughout the world. These people didn't know where they were going. They were literally coming across the border. They were going to Shimashel. They were getting 3 to 4 days rest and medical care in Shimashel. They were picking up whatever bags of aid they could carry being the operative word, right?
Yes.
Moving from there to Medica, get their paperwork sorted out, get onto a bus, and then away to a camp. They didn't know where they were going, what part of the world they were going to. They were going to wherever had room for them. And I remember standing there videoing this. And we're now a week and a half away to Christmas. And it still hits me to this day.
Absolutely.
I am very, very, very close with my grandchildren. Very close to my grandchildren.
Yeah. So me too.
And, they're 4 and they're 5-year-old. And when I was standing videoing, and I'm watching families coming down, and the mother's coming down, and she has a baby on her shoulders, and her hands are full of 2 or 3 plastic carrier bags of aid, being toiletries and a bit of food and some nappies for the baby, etc., etc., etc. And a child the age of my grandchildren, dragging a suitcase that was bigger than him to get to the bus. That hit me.
Yeah.
And when kids here today are wondering what they're getting for Christmas or what Santa Claus is going to bring them,
Absolutely.
to this day, sorry guys.
No.
Yeah, I know what he meant.
To this day, those kids are there today, and they had whatever they had in carrier bags. That was it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was everything they owned in a carrier bag. Yeah,
and that was one of the first things I noticed when we got there, right? And I was watching people come in from the border, and like you said, you hit it.
Nail on the head,
mate. And I was watching them coming in, and they had carrier bags and stuff like that, right? And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, look, and it's got to affect you, man. It's got to, unless unless there's something different about you, and I can understand exactly where you're coming from. And those effects, I'll be honest with you, they'll never go away. And some people, a friend of mine was here today now, right? My friend lives in Thailand, right? And I was telling him about what's happening tonight, right? And that's the first thing he asked me. He said, what was it like out there, Ken? And I just said, you don't really want to know. I said, it was, what we did was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Will I do it again? Oh, yeah, man. I'll do it again.
In an instant.
I'll do it again. And we will do it again, right? I promise you guys, right? We will do it again, right? And I will. I've said we're going to do it again, and we will end up doing it again, right? But it's so emotional. And I Gerard, honestly, I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. I really can.
Obviously, like everyone before we all went, I mean, personally speaking, I had watching my TV. I had my kids at the table, my wife at the table, and they're squabbling over a pen or breakfast. Yeah. And then I was watching the TV, and there were demons that I had long locked away that came out with a vengeance. When I went, obviously, and same as you, Ken, people were like, "Oh, what's it like out there?" And I was like, "Well, do you know what? Just." I see anybody that says, "Oh, it's all made up and the media this and it's all a conspiracy," absolute craziness, because obviously having been there myself. However, for me personally, the comfort I took from doing what we did to coming home, I found it very, very therapeutic. I was able to cage my demons again, and it really helped me. Starting with you, Mike, now that you've done it, did it make the whole situation easier for you to bear, or having been there, did it make it more difficult to watch it, knowing exactly what it was like, having been there yourself?
To be honest, you guys, when I was watching it on the news before we went, and I'm not a great lover of the news, because I believe a lot of the reporters, they just hook on to certain things and they just emphasise it and they blow it out of all proportion. And in this case, there were points on there which I do totally disagree with the news broadcasters, etc. However, having experienced it and being out there, it did shed a completely different light on everything that went on out there. And when you consider what could happen with other countries and what happens during the war, you can then actually understand what it must have been like for our fathers and our grandfathers when they actually went to war themselves, and what they had to put up with and what they actually saw themselves. Mm-hmm. And it just helps you to understand that those guys who are coming home from those conflicts, and especially if there's nobody there to help them deal with those demons, Kenny, right? Then I have totally got a different outlook now on when I meet people like that, and I've got a much, much better understanding of what they must be going through. Because if it did that to me, and I consider myself to be a very easygoing, very sort of amicable kind of a person, and there's not a lot that phases me. Mm-hmm. But for somebody who's a soldier, who's trained in some respects to turn off to that stuff, you can't. I don't care what anyone says. No. You cannot turn off to that.
No.
And yes, it has impacted my life profoundly. Absolutely. I can't say any more. It's given me a totally different outlook. And when people moan and groan over simple things and whatever, and I think to myself, guys, you've not lived. You know, you need to go out and see these kids, these parents, these mothers, and families who have lost children, who have lost husbands, have lost wives, and you were squabbling, as you say, Kenny, over something so simple, or mourning over a couple of pounds for a gas bill and whatever. And these people are freezing to death. Absolutely. So, the answer is it did affect me. Have I learned to live with it? I have learned to live with it. Does it still affect me? Yes, it does. No doubt about it. And I still think about the times that we had out there together as a group, guys. And there's only one thing, and I will say there's only one thing that helps me forget about it for a little time when I do start thinking about the Ukraine trip. And that's got to be, sorry, Ken, the cat. And that's the light-hearted bit about it for me.
Probably going to bring it up me.
And I know you're going to bring it up maybe later. But I will say this, so guys, when I do feel like that and I'm thinking about that, the first thing that comes to mind is Gerard, Kenny, and the cat.
Yeah.
And that really does, it helps lighten it then, shall I say, guys? Yeah.
Yeah. For those that don't know the story of the cat, Kenny, you want to tell this one?
Yeah. Okay. So when the war broke out, I had a friend of mine who had opened his home to Ukrainian refugees. It was before the mandatory conscription came in, so it was a young mother, a young father. I mean, they're younger than me, so they'd be maybe sort of mid 30s. They had a little 7-year-old. She was 7 at the time, a little 7-year-old girl, and they lived in a place called Kramatorsk, which is right over on the east of Ukraine, on the border with Russia. They'd already experienced problems back in 2014 when the Crimea incident had taken place, but long story short, as the invasion began, and within meters of their own homes, explosion, and we're talking missile explosions, were detonating, and they made the decision to up sticks and basically run for their lives. So the 1,000-mile journey took place, and at the time of them leaving, they literally got into a car, the mum, the dad, and the little girl, and they started driving west. And of all of the things that were left behind by this little 7-year-old girl, and we're talking all of her clothes, all of her toys, all of the the stuff that kiddies hold precious to them, the one thing that was left behind was their pet cat. And I was to later find out that this cat was given to this little girl by Santa Claus when she was just 4. So the cat was 3 years old, and the cat was nowhere to be found when they legged it. And I'm presuming that all of the noise and everything that was happening, the cat was terrified, and they had to make anyone that has a pet, be it a cat, be it a dog, be it whatever, if you can imagine just leaving that animal behind and driving away, knowing that you're probably never, ever going to go back. And I knew nothing about this until the family finally arrived in Northern Ireland because of all the delays with the visas, etc. It was a really long process, but they eventually came. They got to Northern Ireland, to a place called Carrickfergus, and they got to safety. And I remember me and my wife and my 2 children, we went to go meet my friend, his wife and children, and this Ukrainian family in a soft cafe. Like a soft cafe where the kids run around with the balls and the slides, and the kids were all off playing. And this little girl didn't speak a word of English, but I downloaded an app onto my phone. I think I paid about £40 or £50 for it. But what it allowed them to do was to speak into the phone, hit a flag, and then it translated it. So my little girl, who was about the same age as this Ukrainian girl, were able to have fully fledged conversations, albeit via this translator. And they went off playing. And I sat with obviously the parents, and the mother of the Ukrainian mother is a girl called Elisa. She started to explain this story to me of them leaving. And I remember being sat in this soft play cafe. All these kids are red-faced, sweaty, puking up because they've had too much sweets and Coke, and they're going down slides. And the absolute horror that this mother was explaining to me about what they had to do to get away. And the little girl had drawn a picture, and it was of a Ukrainian soldier and a Russian soldier and a cat, and there was a speech bubble, and it was in Russian, because over in the east of Ukraine they speak predominantly Russian. And the mother, I said, what would that have said? And the mother looked, and she was, and I said, tell me what it is. And she goes, no, I can't say. And I said, no, please tell me. And it was the cat saying, do you even remember me? And this was a little Ukrainian girl who had broken her heart for 1,000 miles just to get out of a war-torn country. And all she wanted was a cat. And my wife, knowing me as she knows me, could start to see the cogs ticking. And I was like, and I remember I turned around, I said, Elisa, I'm going to go and get your cat. And of course, she's just come out of a country that she has witnessed herself be blown to smithereens. Everything's ruined, everything's wrecked. And she was looking at me as if I was, not entirely wise. And she says, oh, okay. And I said, no, Elisa, you don't understand me. I am going to go and get your cat. And that is the conversation that actually prompted the call to Gerard. And I said, Gerard, you fancy going to Ukraine? And Gerard was like, yeah. He didn't even bat an eyelid. And off we went. So obviously, I think it was Michael, Ken had said earlier on in this that, we had to rush off. And the story behind that was that we left the distribution center and we went off to the border itself. And initially, I had a plan whereby the cat was going to be brought across the border for us by a vet. And I had fixers, for want of a better phrase, on both sides of the border. I had a plan B just in case that couldn't happen. And about 2 hours before the cat was meant to come to us, I got word that they just weren't going to cross the border. So I had to go into Ukraine itself. And I remember Gerard drove me to the car park right at the edge of this camp and, gave Gerard a hug and said, listen, here's a picture of me. Here's a picture of my passport. If anything happens, make sure they come and get me at least, And off I went, and I managed to talk my way through the Polish side of the border, which was incredible, really, because there was a great big queue, and I saw a little door with a doorbell on it, and I was pushed for time because obviously we had our own timeline as a group of people, and I literally walked up to the front of this thing and I pressed the doorbell. And the door just opened. And I walked into this room and it was full of Polish and Ukrainian soldiers. And you could see them looking at me as if to say, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And I walked over, playing the tourist, going, oh, it's nice in here, isn't it? At least it's a little bit cooler. It's roasting outside. And I gave them my passport and I said, I'm going to Ukraine. And you could see them all just looking at each other and they were, gassing away. And one of them actually just looked at my passport. He looked at me and he looked at my passport again and he just went, okay. And he stamped my passport and that was me. I just walked off into Ukraine. And I'd promised to keep in touch with Gerard every 15 minutes or so, just to promise him, I'd show him that I'm okay and et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't until halfway through the dead man zone, the demilitarized zone between the two countries, I realized that my battery was at about 20%. I thought I'd been charging it the whole day and it wasn't getting charged at all. And I was, of course, like, what am I going to do here? So I made the decision to put my phone onto airplane mode so it didn't drain the battery. But there'd been a power cut just on the other side of the border because that is called the Lviv Oblast or region. And it'd been attacked and all of the power was out. So they couldn't even process people to get through. I'm sure you guys remember the huge queue of traffic. And that was because a missile had just exploded, probably, I think, a matter of kilometers away from where I was trying to get to. And there was no power. So eventually the power came on and I managed to get into the country and I had to go a kilometer or so away and to pick up this cat. Managed to get the cat and then had to turn around, do exactly the same thing to get back across the border. There's a fuller version of this, which is going to be part of the documentary. So I won't spoil it all for everyone now. But long story short, we got this cat safely across the border and incredibly, really. I mean, they talk about the stars aligning and, there was so many moving parts to get that cat. But I know, Mike, you were particularly fond of the cat, and every time we did a stop at a petrol station or toilet break, all you guys would go off to the toilet and get a brew and I would be in the back of a van with a cat.
With a cat. Yeah.
I have to say, right, for, the trip in itself, the journey in itself and visiting the distribution center and the migration center and all, as heart-wrenching as it was, that cat managed to pull everybody together because everybody got on board with the story of the little girl and the cat. And hats off to every single one of you. That's Invictus, Black Mountain, Wolfruna Chapter, every single one of you. When we got to the distribution centre straight away. Right, guys, get your van in there first. And every one of them jumped into the back of that van. Let's get you empty. We had that van. It took us the better part of an hour and a half to load that van.
Yeah.
And it took 15 minutes to empty it.
That's why we needed it from there.
Exactly.
Just to get us away, to get up to the border. You know,
All
so
about
hats off to
priorities,
you guys.
Yeah.
So that's the story of the cat.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, right, when we first met you, right, and Kenny, right, Kenny, I don't know if Kenny can remember this, right, but we were all sitting there eating our breakfast,
Right.
and you brought the cat up, right, and what you said to us all was, do you all fancy coming with me to pick this cat up, right? And we all said, like, sort of, some didn't say it, but I remember saying, yeah, I'll come with you, Ken, no problem. Right? I'm coming, like, you know, whatever happens, I'm coming. And I always remember, right after that conversation with you, when Martin said to me, he said, there's something wrong with you, or what? He said, what? He said, you're going to go in and get a cat? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'll go for it. I said, Kenny wants us to come with him, let's go. I said, what's going to happen? And you know what, right? I only look at it now and say to myself, oh, God, I'm glad I didn't go with him. Because the two of us will be probably still there now.
Yeah. We had it.
At the end of the day.
We had the plan that when he went across, he was to text me every 15 minutes. And if I
that's right.
If I didn't get a text message from him in 15 minutes, I was heading across, right?
Yeah.
Lo and behold, Kenny being Kenny, I got 2 text messages from him. And then blank.
Dead.
So I was.
And I remember it.
I was literally on my way to cross the border, and I got a text message from him saying, "Right, be ready in 5 minutes. I'm on my way."
Yeah. Ken, Mike, I know Gerard's going to say goodbye as well, but just from me as Kenny, listen, thank you so much for joining us, and it's great to see you both again. You're like family speaking to you, and it's been just an absolute pleasure to just see you again, and hopefully we will cross paths in early as possible in 2023 and get a cup of coffee together, or probably a beer. As Ken know, I fell off the wagon in Birmingham, so we'll take it. Yeah, we'll take a beer. So listen, from me, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you.
And from me, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, and it's an absolute pleasure. And you're always welcome. Always welcome. My door's always open to you.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Yourselves.
Yeah. Bye now.